So we can do short reflection on the Dhamma. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Dhammaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Saṅghaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi. Tatiyampi Buddhaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Tatiyampi Dhammaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Tatiyampi Saṅghaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi. Tatiyampi Buddhaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Tatiyampi Dhammaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Tatiyampi Saṅghaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi. So welcome everybody to Tuesday meditation, and have a couple new friends here. And Dilly, who's my Facebook friend, is from Sri Lanka. So it's kind of nice to meet with everybody on a regular basis to do some meditation. And when people kind of meet together, whatever the kind of group of people do together, and the norms, the kind of ways that people do things in a group, this is what creates a kind of culture. It was kind of going through these kind of Sinhalese words. I think it's called Sanskritiya or something. Is it Sanskritiya? Okay. Kind of thanks to Google Translate, I learned what that word was. And the Buddha has kind of emphasized a lot on the importance of a kind of group of people. Also, oftentimes in this meditation class talk a lot about the individual, kind of how it's important that we become an island unto ourselves, a refuge unto ourselves. But the Buddha also emphasized groups a lot. He also placed a lot of emphasis, particularly on people's friends, on the types of friends that people have. One of the reasons for this is because when people come together, they always come together for a purpose. It's not like sometimes people randomly meet up in the subway, but when people interact, there's always a kind of purpose in mind. There's always a reason that they're doing that. Kind of go down the streets, often kind of in the morning time, you kind of see all these various people, and kind of wave hello to them, like, hey, how you doing? People don't know what monks do, so kind of a lot of these kind of waves. And there's a purpose behind saying hello. Try to keep in mind, the purpose of this is to, cultivate harmony. May this be a kind of source of what they call samagi, or kind of harmony. But you can say hello for all kinds of different reasons, really. You might be going along on Pindapat and, I'd sure like some food. Why don't I say hello to this person and maybe they'll give me some food? This is what's called wrong livelihood in Buddhist teachings. But in other words, there's always this kind of purpose for our interactions with people. Always a reason for which we interact with people. It can be a kind of altruistic reason, can be a non-altruistic reason, but whatever the intentions behind our interactions with other people, when we interact with them on the basis of that intention, then it tends to form a culture. Even 2 people, 3 people, it's kind of in a temple, it's in a house, it's in a workplace. When these people get together and interact for a specific purpose, it forms a culture. Whatever way that they interact for that purpose, it kind of forms this particular culture. So you can notice this actually as a monk. It's very kind of interesting. Remember when I was living at one monastery, the kind of abbot there is kind of usually based around the leader. And he had a lot of kind of what they call metta, or loving kindness. Kind of when he'd leave the temple or leave the monastery, you would kind of notice, his presence was gone. Kind of this kind of warm feeling would go. And then he'd come back and it would return. But the culture that got created around that temple was based on the way that abbot interacted with people. This is the way it is. Whoever is in a kind of leadership position, they set the norms often, not totally, but quite often. One of the reasons why the Buddha actually, has a lot to say. Sometimes he has things to say about kings. He's like, when the kings are not virtuous, then the subjects aren't their ministers aren't virtuous, their subjects aren't virtuous, the whole place, becomes unvirtuous. When kings are virtuous, then that becomes a norm. He doesn't say norm, these are kind of new words, but he says their subjects become virtuous, the kind of whole country becomes virtuous, and then various benefits flow from that. So the interesting thing is that although these are group interactions, although these things happen on a group level, we form these interactions, we form these cultures at an individual level. In other words, it depends a lot on our intentions, the reasons for which we interact with people, our purpose in interacting with people forms the culture, forms the feeling, forms the vibe. It's kind of the reasons why this abbot left. We do the same things, kind of do chanting, whatever, do kind of meditation. But when he was there, had this kind of very strong metta feeling to it. When he was gone, kind of the feeling would go. Kind of not that other people didn't have metta, just that he had quite a lot of it, quite a lot of this kind of feeling. And so when we come together as a group for whatever purpose, having this intention in mind can do a couple things. For one thing, if a person has good intentions, it protects that person in their interactions with people. When a person has this intention, may I interact with people in a way that's harmonious, this is a protection for them. When a person has an intention, may I interact with people in such a way that I get something, this is a lack of protection for them. This is a kind of danger for them. And so I remember when I was young, kind of, growing up, and you'd have all these kind of attitudes of competition. The school system, to a certain extent, I mean, it's fine. You kind of have to have, a little bit of competition here and there, in the economy and these various things. We can get kind of very competitive, right? Everything can be a little bit of a competition. Okay, you're there with your friend, who's the kind of, who's the kind of best at whatever, kind of these competitive attitudes. And one's interactions with people in that kind of sense can stem into, what can I get from this person? What can I gain? The danger in this kind of interaction with people is that it attracts a person to people who have the same intentions. It attracts a person to cultures that are built around that. Subtly, it attracts them to that. And the interesting thing about it is when people have this kind of intention, may I get what I can from whoever I'm with. May I gain something from them. And kind of this, obviously we always get something. There's always a give and take. When we have this kind of unwholesome intention, what it tends to do is it attracts people to people who they can't get. It attracts people to things that they don't have. It makes them want those things, almost like this kind of carrot dangling in front of them. You kind of see kind of people like that, their group of friends, whoever they're with, they're not that important. Who's really important is this person over there, whoever it is, kind of the movie star, or the person who's one level up at work. That's who's important. That person comes around, oh, how you doing, people who are there helping you every day, those people are not so important. The danger of this kind of thing is that when one gets attracted so much to people that one doesn't have, to cultures that one doesn't have, one lives in craving. One lives with this kind of desire. May I have this thing that I don't have? It kind of fails to notice the good things that are around one. In other words, it's a danger. Having this intention attracts people to these cultures that are dangerous. Kind of dangerous in the sense that you can end up around people who have these intentions that are the same. What can I do to get from this person? What can I gain from this person? What can I take from this person? This is kind of the kind of asura world. They've got these different levels of rebirth. You've got the world of the devas, the kind of interesting stories. Actually, Buddhist kind of mythology overlaps with Greek mythology a lot. Greek mythology, they had the kind of younger gods, who was like led by Zeus. And then you had these older gods who were led by this, what they called Titans, who were led by this god named Kronos. And these older gods were really evil. The younger gods were good. And the younger gods overthrew the older gods, kicked them out of heaven. And in Buddhism, the myth is the same. You had these older gods who are called asuras. They're kind of very demon-like. So what can I get from the other, asuras? They're always fighting with each other. You think it will make you powerful. But the younger gods were led by this god named Indra, or Inda, or Saka, as we call him in Buddhism. and they overthrew these older gods. And the people can be, kind of seem very powerful like this. May I get what I can from another person. It's kind of like this Asura type mind state. It's like this Titan type mind state. You're going to see, these people, I'm the, top dog. But when people act that way, it creates a culture like that. A culture where when people are down on their luck, when they're not doing so well, those people are left on their own. So in other words, although it can seem like something that will bring a person a lot of benefit, it brings a lot of danger. And one of the interesting things is that when one develops an opposite intention, one develops this intention, may the people I interact with, may this interaction be harmonious. May this interaction be good. May this be a benefit to me. May it be a benefit to them. May it benefit both of us. May this be harmonious. What that tends to do is attract people to people who are like that. It attracts people to cultures who are like that. And when one develops this intention, one tends to start to notice the people who are around one, who've been supporting one one's whole life, who've been helping one out one's whole life. These people become the most important thing. Not the person who's, a couple levels up, who can get the promotion, not the rich person who came into the room, maybe they can give me something good, So the benefit of this, the safety in this, is that one tends to stop running after things that one doesn't have. One tends to become more delighted with the people one has, more delighted with the culture one has, so long as that culture is not unvirtuous. So long, that's what one gets attracted to. The other interesting protection that comes from this is that when one wants people who are far outside of oneself, what tends to happen is one ends up getting abused by these people who one really wants. Who is it? I really need this person. I really need this culture. I really need this thing that I don't have. And to get that thing, a person puts up with abuse. In other words, it becomes a situation where one is no longer living in harmony either towards oneself or other people. This lack of harmony, trying to get what one wants, leads often to one being abused. The interesting thing is that when one goes about in one's relationships with this attitude, may this be harmonious, may this be mutually beneficial, it tends to be this kind of red flag. When somebody is acting in a way that's going to be detrimental to oneself, detrimental to themselves. And immediately one's mind starts to pull away from that, gravitate away from that. So this is a nice thing, developing this attitude of harmony. One starts to look basically for people who have good intentions towards oneself. And as one builds these relationships, builds friendships like this, one's whole world starts to become brighter. One's whole world starts to become nicer. Actually, this is the thing. There's all kinds of different people in the world all the time. Just tons of, every, shade of personality, whatever, hairstyle. It was kind of mostly all there. But one's experience of the world largely, or to a great extent, can depend on all these various people one interacts with. One has a circle of friends who are very ruthless. One becomes ruthless oneself. One's whole world seems dark. One has a circle of friends, circle of acquaintances who are looking for harmony, who are caring. Then all of a sudden, one's world seems a very bright place. Seems a very good place to be because of the cultivation of these relationships, because of living in these cultures. This is one of the interesting things about the way that culture can affect people. It's one of the things that Buddha says. He says, if you want to kind of advance, I'm not super good at memorizing suttas, but, basically be restrained in virtue, kind of be generous, cultivate meditation, develop the jhanas, be possessed of insight, and there's one more, which I can't remember, but it's a good thing, they're all good things. And then the interesting thing is this is one of these suttas where he goes through and lists them in 9. So there's 5 things, and then it's a list of 9. But in any event, I'll kind of paraphrase it. Then he goes through the second part. He says, if a person wants to be virtuous, have friends who are virtuous. If a person wants to be generous, I'm paraphrasing, I don't remember if that was exactly what he said, but have friends who are generous. If a person wants to have the jhanas, basically have friends who have the jhanas. If a person wants to be possessed of insight, then have friends who have insight. The reason for this is because when one cultivates people as friends, when one cultivates people as acquaintances, there's a purpose. There's a purpose in their coming together. People who have virtue as their intention. And if we want to interact with them, then we have to have intentions of virtue. Otherwise, they won't want to hang out with us. If we're not virtuous, we have to change our intentions to be able to hang out with people like that. If people have concentration, then we have to change our intentions, change our lifestyle so they match up with the lifestyle of the people who have concentration. If we want to have wisdom, then we have to change our intentions, change our lifestyle to match up with the people who have wisdom. So in other words, there's a purpose for our coming together. There's a way that we come together. There's a culture that our coming together creates. And if people come together with these intentions of virtue, with these intentions of generosity, with these intentions of concentration, with these intentions of wisdom, their coming together creates a culture. Their coming together creates a culture of virtue, creates a culture of generosity, a culture of concentration, a culture of wisdom. This is one of the interesting things you notice as a monk going to train at a monastery. It's not necessarily like there's a book written for you, kind of like, okay, read this book. There kind of is. I mean, there's the monastic rules. But there's often not like a book, like, you just read the book and follow the steps in the book. What you find yourself in when you go to a monastery is a culture. And if you want to fit into that culture, then you have to change your behavior to mold yourself in line with that culture, in line with the culture of the monastery, in line with the intentions of the abbot. You're kind of changing your behavior in this way, you automatically, just by living there. It's like a stream. Sometimes they have this word like the Dhamma stream. Kind of the Dhamma stream carries them along. So long as this kind of culture of the Dhamma becomes strong, then people can interact with each other, and just this culture alone can help to carry them along. They don't have to fight against the stream. They don't have to go against the grain. Just the people they interact with, the people that are their friends, are their acquaintances, their presence alone helps to shore them up, helps to move them forward. So this is one of the amazing things about doing things that are simple like this, coming together with intentions that are good, coming together with intentions that are wholesome, is that it can seem like something small, whatever it is. You could be doing, people could be doing many various things. But even one notices, actually I notice when I come to the temples, usually when I come to this temple, I'll be here for about like 5 minutes or something like that, or 10 minutes. And after about 10 minutes, I'll just go, kind of, not like intentional. It's kind of being in the atmosphere of the temple, you just feel your body relax. Okay, and it's also something subtle. You know that the monks in the temple are not going to honk their horn. You basically know that their intentions towards you are good. You kind of know that the monks who are living here, their job is to do good. Their job is to be good. Their job is to promote good. That's the reason that they're monks. That's the reason that the temple exists. And so coming to a place like a temple like that, one feels at ease. One feels supported. One feels good. And this is what gives a person strength. This is one of the things that gives a person inner strength. Because the culture that one exists in can have a subtle effect. A subtle but powerful effect. Actually, the other day, I was in a complex and was stopped and talked to a fellow. And we got to talking about walls. They have these kind of walls. And I think they're called berms. They kind of, maybe they are, I don't know. But basically, you have this kind of big hill. and they dug out a huge portion of the hill to make a parking lot, right? And then that hill gets set up with these bricks. The bricks stop the dirt from falling into the parking lot. And in this particular complex, the bricks needed to be replaced. They replaced one section, then another one. But looking down with this fellow, we got to talking about it. These bricks were just all crumbling. You could see the kind of bricks just breaking apart. They were just sand, And it's like, okay, they're going to have to replace this wall. That one's going to be big. It's going to be like more than $100,000. And we got to talking about walls, and But in any event, one of the things that he said was, that's what water does. Emphasizing water. It's like, that's what water does. It's like, over time, water will just destroy this kind of wall. It seems like something small, but over time, this water will just, obliterate a big stone wall to the point where it starts to crumble apart. And in the same way, it can seem subtle, seem like not such a big thing, but when one is surrounded by friends, surrounded by companions who don't have one's best interests at heart, who don't wish that one does well, who want to get what they can get from a person, whether it's at work, whether it's in a country, whether it's in the home. It's like this water, slowly wearing away, not shoring up. So this is why when we have a culture like this, it goes in the opposite direction. It helps. The new walls that they built had this the old ones, what he was commenting on, it goes down like this. It's like on a slope. So he said what happens when the water comes down that wall, it hits all these bricks. And over time, those bricks erode. When they built this new wall, they built it straight up, and then they put this brick that overhung, that went over out, and so here's the wall, here's the brick. I don't know if my hands are doing a good job, but you get, okay, that's the brick, that's the wall, right? So then when the water comes, it comes off the edge of the brick and drips to the ground. It doesn't affect the wall. That wall can last a long time, can be supportive for a long time. And in the same way, when we cultivate these good friends, we cultivate good comrades, we cultivate good acquaintances, these people in our lives act like this drip wall. They stop the water from flowing over us. They help it drip away, where it won't touch us, where it won't corrode. These people have a shoring up effect on our life, so that the wall can last a long time, so that it can stop huge amounts of dirt from falling away. So this is why in our interactions with others as a monk, one of the things you always look for, I was talking to these teenagers today. I got asked to give a talk specifically to teenagers, which was they were nice teenagers, first time I've ever talked to just teenagers. But one of the things that got to talking about was that oftentimes in a person's life, in the West at least, not everybody, but just the thrust of Western culture is that it's important to have a big house, important to have a fast car, important to have a lot of money, whatever these things are. And the people who have these things are praised. They're praised because of their command of the pleasing forms of the eye. We might call they're praised because of their command of sensuality. They can, through their wealth, have a lot of pleasing forms of the eye, a lot of pleasing smells, hear a lot of pleasing sounds. They can eat good food. All these kind of things are at their command, so long as they have a lot of money. And so people in the world look for these things. When they look for people to admire, that's the natural instinct. Who's the doctor? Who's the lawyer? Who's the engineer? Who's got the money? Right? Because that commands sensual pleasures. But as a monk, as a person who wants to practice, not just a monk, but as a person who wants to practice the Dhamma, we look for a different set of qualities in people. We don't look for their wealth. We look for their sincerity. We look for their wholesome qualities. We look for their humility, for their generosity. We look for their virtue, for their concentration, for their wisdom. That's what you look for. People who have these things, whether they're rich, whether they're a doctor, whether they're a lawyer, whether they're poor, whether they're a laborer, those are people who are worth associating with. Those are people who can progress in their meditation practice. If a person is rich and they're unvirtuous, they're vain, they're conceited, they're hard to teach, they're unbending, those are people who are not able to progress well in the Dhamma. Those are people to be avoided. Whether they're rich or poor, these people bring bad things into a person's life. Not just to label people like X, Y, or Z. I mean, people are a mix. But in general, this is what to look for. This is what the Dhamma teaches us to look for in the people we associate with. And it's for that reason. Because all the happiness and suffering that we experience comes from our own mind, comes from our own intentions. It comes from our own kamma. It comes from the way we cultivate. But the way that we cultivate is influenced by the people we associate with. It's influenced by the culture we live in. It's influenced by the reasons that we get together with people. And so long as we get together with people for the sake of virtue, for the sake of generosity, for the sake of concentration, for the sake of wisdom, our life becomes supported. Our life becomes protected. Like that wall with the drip ledge, our life is able to support, to hold back a large number of things. So it's for this reason that the Buddha said, cultivate virtue. I'm paraphrasing. Cultivate generosity, cultivate concentration, cultivate wisdom. For one who wants to cultivate these things, associate with someone who's virtuous. Associate with someone who's generous. Associate with one who's concentrated. Associate with one who's wise. And you'll become that way yourself.